This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good Erev Shabbos, Rabbi, as we prepare for Parshas Boy. Parshas Boy, of course, we know has the last three makas, beginning with makas arbeh, and amazingly, if you look in the beginning of the Parsha, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Boy el Paroi, come to Paroi. Ki ani hechbareti es liboy, I hardened his heart. The slave avodav in the heart of his servants, Laman Shisi, Oisoisai, Ele, Bekirbai, so that I could place my signs in him. Laman Tesaper Ba'oznei Vincha, so that you can relate in the ears of your children, of En Bincha, and your grandchildren, Eis Asher Hisalalti b'Mitzrayim, how I mocked the Egyptians, Ves Oisoisai Asher Samti Vam, V'datem Ki Ani Hashem. Unbelievably, even though we all know that this makkah refers to makas arbeh, Hashem does not tell Moshe one word about makas arbeh. All he says is, Boy el Paroi, come to Paroi, go to Paroi. Says Rashi, Boy el Paroi v'hisra boy, and warn him. Warn him what? About which makkah? Doesn't say a word. Not one word. Warn him what? Warn him there's a tsunami coming. Warn him that the stock market's going up. Well, what should you warn him about? Why is it completely omitted what the makkah is? And Moshe Rabbeinu goes to Paro and he tells Paro, Paro, watch out. Arbeh is coming. How did Moshe Rabbeinu know arbeh is coming? Rebbe Hashem never told Moshe Rabbeinu arbeh is coming. It is the only makkah where the Rebbe Hashem did not tell Moshe what the makkah was. Also, it seems that of all the makkos, the makkah which really disparaged the mitzvah more than any other makkah is makas arbeh. Ulaman tesaper ba'oznei vincha ben mincha eis asher hisalalti b'mitzvah, how I mocked the mitzvah. What arbeh was a bigger mockery than the other makkos? Let me ask you a question. When the Egyptians heard a knock on the front door, and they look out the window and they saw a polar bear, that wasn't a mockery. And when the octopus came and used its tentacles to suction out the locks, and then the rhinoceros came in, that wasn't a mockery? That wasn't a mockery? No, that was okay. But the grasshoppers is a mockery. And when Paroi took a shower, and he put the shampoo in his head and he was wondering why it was red, that wasn't a mockery. And when Paro's wife made cholent, and Paro said, what kind of flanken did you put in it? It looks like frogs. That wasn't a mockery. That was also a mockery. And when Paro came home, his wife said, Paro, why do you have this welt on your head? I was outside, I got hit by hail. Middle of the summer, you got hit by hail? That wasn't a mockery. Oh, the arbeh was a mockery. Why is the arbeh a mockery? Says the Ramban, V'hinei hoidia HaKadosh Baruch Hu ata l'Moshe makas ha'arbeh. The Rebbe Hashem is now telling Moshe the makkah of arbeh, v'sheyagid oisa l'paroi, that he should say it over to Paroi. Kimatam boyel Paroi. What other reason would there be for the Rebbe Hashem to tell Moshe? Hashem didn't tell Moshe what to tell Paroi. So obviously, boyel Paroi means tell him about makas arbeh. Otherwise, what's Moshe Rabbeinu supposed to do? Going to Paroi. The Ramban says, V'loi niska rak b'divrei Moshe. Makas arbeh is only mentioned in Moshe's words to Paroi. Ki hakasav kitzer b'zeh. In other words, every makkah there are two parts: Hashem telling Moshe and Moshe telling Paroi. So technically speaking, it's okay that the Torah doesn't say what Hashem says to Moshe, because it fills in the blanks in what Moshe told Paroi. So the pasuk was concise. It wanted to save some money on the printing, so it didn't say exactly what the makkah is in Hashem's words to Moshe, even though you could be sure Hashem told Moshe about makas arbeh, but it adds in the details in Moshe's words to Paroi. Right, there's a rule, divrei Torah aniyim b'makom echad ve'ashirim b'makom acher. Says Ramban, another example of this by makas barad, where you have it in what Hashem told Moshe. When Hashem told Moshe about the makkah, it talks about makas barad. But when Moshe warns Paroi, it doesn't say in the Chumash anything about barad. There also the Torah was concise. In other words, sometimes the Torah saves space in what Hashem tells Moshe, and sometimes the Torah saves space in what Moshe tells Paroi. V'lei hiska, right? V'chein kitzel l'mala b'makas habarad shesiper divrei HaKadosh Baruch Hu el Moshe hisyatzev l'fnei Paroi v'yamarta elav v'lei hiska divrei Moshe el Paroi klal k'moshe pirashti. Why? The sibazeh shelo yirtze laharich b'shneim. The Torah did not want to be marach. Pam yikatzer bazeh upam bazeh. But says the Ramban, I'm going to tell you an amazing explanation why makas arbeh is not mentioned in Hashem's words to Moshe, because in a way it was mentioned. If you look in the Medrash, what you see, I found, it says by makas arbeh ulaman tisaper ba'oznei bincha hoidia yakadosh baruch hu Moshe ma mako yavi aleim. Hashem is telling Moshe what mako he's bringing upon them. How? Because of Isa Moshe beremez, there's a remez. It says by makas arbeh ulaman tisaper ba'oznei bincha ben bincha zu makas ha'arbeh. When you see the lashon of laman tisaper, that refers to makas arbeh. Kema de tamar, like it says in a pasuk in Sefer Yoel. There's a sefer called Yoel in the Troyasar. It says in Yoel, right? We know Rashi mentions the contrast between the arbeh in the times of Mitzrayim and the arbeh in the times of the Navi Yoel. In the times of the Navi Yoel, there was never a arbeh there were 4 different species of arbeh sent in the times of Yoel. There was gazam, there was chalak, and so forth. In the times of Parai, it was only 1 species of grasshopper, and they were both unparalleled. There was never so many of one species as in the times of Mitzrayim, and there was never such a diverse representation of grasshoppers as in the times of Yoel. But says the Ramban, it says in Yoel, Aleha livnechem saperu, uvenechem livenehem, uvenehem lidaracher. It says by the grasshoppers of Yoel, leman tisaper. And it says over here, leman tisaper. So just like in Yoel, it says leman tisaper refers to what? Grasshoppers. So too in Parshas Boy, when it says leman tisaper, refers to grasshoppers. But it doesn't say that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, tell Pari about arbeh. Moshe Rabbeinu, so to speak, made a gzeira shava. It says leman tisaper by Yoel in reference to grasshoppers. So therefore, when the Rebbe Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu leman tisaper, he figured out it refers to grasshopper. What is this called? Gzeira shava. Even though Yoel wasn't written yet, right?
But how you have to really learn the Torah,
right? So the Ramban doesn't quite say it the way I said. The Ramban says that Hashem told Moshe explicitly, and Moshe recorded it b'derech remez. But even so, Moshe Rabbeinu had to know the pasuk in Yoel. But again, this is some form of gzeira shava. It says, leman tisaper, to your children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, ba Yoel, which is a reference to the grasshoppers. And it says, leman tisaper, ba'oznei bincha ben bincha. So first of all, Rabbi say, this is certainly something which is very noteworthy. All the other makos, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, black and white, dam, tzvardeya, kinim, aroi, dever, and so forth. By makas arbeh, all of a sudden Moshe Rabbeinu is like a Tana. He's using biblical exegesis, right? He's using the 13 principles, Yugimel Mido Shatar and Reshas for him to figure out, Moshe is a big lamdin. It says leman tisaper in Yoel. It says leman tisaper here. The Rebbe Hashem obviously means arbeh. Very strange why this makkah befrat, Moshe Rabbeinu, so to speak, is using the kayach of Torah Shabal Peh. Also, what is it about this makkah specifically, we mentioned already, was the biggest mockery of the Mitzrim, but also that it's so important to say ba'oznei bincha or ben bincha. It doesn't say by any of the other makkahs to transmit it to the children and grandchildren, only by arbeh, and likewise in Yoel also, levnechem saperu vnechem levnehem. Another amazing thing we see by makas arbeh, the arbeh were very frum. They were Sabbath observant. The arbeh were Sabbath observant. Now the polar bears, makas arov, were not Sabbath observant. And the frogs in makas tzvardeya doesn't say they were Sabbath observant. But says the Balaturim, it says by makas arbeh, vayonach b'chol gevul mitzrayim. Vayonach. Where else does it say the word vayonach? Vayonach bayim ashri. Says the Balatur melamed shenoch ha'arbeh v'shabbos. All of a sudden they're croaking, they're jumping through one of Paro's ears out through the other, they're making Paro crazy, and all of a sudden the siren goes off, and all of a sudden the grasshoppers say, Paro, they grab their little suitcase, and Paro, we're out of here. Paro says, where are you going? Not that I'm going to miss you. We have to keep Shabbos. I don't know, maybe they lit candles, they had a little suda, they had some chalas, the chamishna, but that's what the Baal HaTurim says. The arbeh were mekayim. What's pshat? That of all the makos, The one makkah that there were Shomer Shabbos were the arbeh. Also, the end of Parshas, the end of makas arbeh, Vayemaher Paroi Likra LaMoshe Aaron. Paroi runs to call Moshe and Aaron. Vayomer, and he says, Chatasi Lashem Elokeichem V'lachem. Not only have I sinned against the Rebbe Shem, I sinned against you. I sinned against you. Why? By all the other makas, all Paroi said was Hashem Atzadik Bani Vam Yerushalmi. I only sinned against Hashem. In what way does Paroi come to the recognition that by this makkah, not only did he sin against the Rebbe Shem, he also sinned against Moshe Rabbeinu. By makas dam, he didn't say Chatasi Lashem Lekeichem Lachem. So Rabbi said we have today an amazing understanding of makas arbeh from the Sefer Kol Simcha, the Rebbe Rabunim, Reb Simcha Bunim, mi Peshischa, or some pronounce it mi Parshascha. He was the progenitor, the founder of Ger Chasidus. He lived from 1765 to 1827. 1765 to 1827. He was a Talmud of Reb Mordechai Bennett, and after that he came to learn by the Chayzah in Lublin. And he had many, many prestigious Talmidim. He was the Rebbe of the Reb Nachum Mendel Mikotsk, the Kotzker. He is the Rebbe of Rabbi Yitzchak Mivarki, one of the great Hasidic Admorim. He is the Rebbe of the Chidushei Harim, and he is the Rebbe of Chanoi Chenech Alexander. By the way, the Shoyel Umeshiv, Yosef Shal Halevi Natanzan, he quotes him in his Shas Teshuvos in Chelek Beis, Simen Tes. By the way, Rav Simcha Bunim would say, the Gemara says that it's very important every morning to eat pas shachris, to eat bread in the morning. One thing people should know. People say, I just drink a cup of coffee. And it's very important to eat pas shachris. Aside from the fact that scientifically, somebody eats bread in the morning, it gets your metabolism going. Actually, it keeps the person thinner than if they don't eat breakfast. People who don't eat breakfast, someone who eats lunch and supper, and another guy eats breakfast, lunch, and supper, someone who eats breakfast will be thinner than someone who doesn't. Why? Metabolism gets going quicker. But that's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Yud Aleph Dvarim Nemru B'Pas Shachris. There are 11 benefits of eating bread in the morning. The Gemara says it puts you in a good mood, it makes you love people, it removes sinna from your heart. Well, Rav Simcha Bunim says a deeper meaning of Pas Shachris. It means you should learn a Blat Gemara in the morning. Because the gematria of Pas is 480, the same as Talmud. Talmud is also 480. Okay, so at least if you're not going to eat breakfast, at least learn a Blat Gemara, and even better, do both. First you eat a piece of bread, and then you can learn a Blat Gemara.
Pas is 140.
What?
86.
Pas, tough, pay tough. Pay is 80, and tough.
Pas, pay some.
No, that's Pas Yad, it's Pei Samach. Pas, as in Pas Shachris, is Pei Tav. And if it's not, then forget that Torah. Okay. No, but it is. It's Pei Tav. Fine. So comes the Rebbe, Rabunim, and he says an amazing thing. Why doesn't it say Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Leich el Paroi? Why does it say Bayel Paroi? B'chlal, why didn't Hashem tell Moshe Rabbeinu what makas arbeh was? The answer is Leich would imply that Moshe Rabbeinu has a specific shlichus. Go. But the answer says Rav Simcha Bunim, this was an incredible makkah. You know what the makkah was? Hashem says to Moshe, I'm afraid that if I decide every time what the makkah is going to be, then Bnei Yisrael will think it's not for their benefit. They'll think I'm just deciding what's good for me. Says Rebbe Hashem to Moshe, Boy el Paroi, go to him. And Moshe says, do what? I don't know. Moshe says, do whatever you want. You decide what the makkah is going to be. I'm not telling you what it is. You decide. Boy el Paroi, and make up anything. It's up to you. It's up to you. You could choose. That is why, of all the makas, this was the biggest mockery. Because Hashem said, I don't know what to do. Whatever you want, play with them. Make up something. If the Rebbe Hashem gives Moshe Rabbeinu an instruction, It's not a mockery. This is coming from the Das Elyon of the Ribbanu Shalom of the Borei Olam. It's obviously with tremendous chachma. It's not a mockery of the mitzvah. Says the Rebbe Rabbunim, this makkah, Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem said, play with them, just make up something, whatever you want, whatever tickles your fancy, whatever you're in the mood of. Whatever you're in the mood of.
Why if it's a tzivri, it's not a salalti?
It's not a mockery. That's what the Rebbe Hashem wants. That's chachma aliyona. It's not a mockery.
It's got to be a mockery of them.
What?
They have no koach. That they're.
It's not a mockery. The Rebbe Hashem, it's targeted bombing. It's targeted assault.
Right.
This is mockery. Rebbe Hashem says, I don't know whatever you want to do with them. Just play with them.
So, the quick question: why not?
So we'll see. Oh, we'll get to. We'll see. So says the Rebbe Rabbunim. How did Moshe Rabbeinu come up with makas arbeh? The answer is because Paroi always said, let's enslave the Jews. Pen yirbeh, maybe they'll increase. Paroi wanted to be mavatel, the bracha that Hashem gave to Avram Avinu. Kivarech avarecha number 8. V'harba arbeh zaracha. Moshe, Paroi was saying pen yirbeh. He didn't want the bracha of harba arbeh to come. So Moshe Rabbeinu says that's what I'm going to get him with. Arbeh, taka, kain yirbeh, pen yirbeh, arbeh, harba arbeh. That's why Hashem said neteas yodcha ba'arbeh, with your yodcha, your koyach. That is why of all the makas, says the Rebbe Rabbunim, Parshas says, Chatasi Lashem v'lachem. This time I didn't just insult God. This time I'm not just going against God. I'm going against you too, because you were the one who was mechadesh this makas. All the other makas were legislated from Shemayim. This one was up to your discretion. I'm sinning against you.
How did Paro know? How did Paro know what Hashem had told him?
Because why? Maybe Moshe said, "This is what I'm coming up with."
It was a magician. It was not Hashem. The whole team was afraid of Hashem, not Moshe.
That is why it says, Boyel Pari, and Hashem did not tell Moshe Rabbeinu what the makkah was. Now, 1 second. Putting together the Ramban and the Rebbe Rabbunim together, you could say a little bit different. You could say not just that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu that I don't know what the makkah is, I'm going to leave it up to you. But you could say Hashem told Moshe all the other makkahs, I'm giving it to you as Torah shebachsav, dam, tzvardeya, kinin, black and white. This makkah, I'm going to give you a remez. And you, through the koyach of Torah Shebal Peh, I want you to figure out and come to the correct conclusion of what I really want. So Moshe Rabbeinu with the koyach of Torah Shebal Peh, which is the koyach of the Chachamim, it's not the koyach of Shemayim, because we know that the Chachmei Yisrael could manipulate the Shemayim even. Torah is loy b'Shemayim here. It's really whatever the Chachamim say, but Moshe Rabbeinu through the koyach of Gzeira Shava, it says Laman tisaper ba'oznei bincha, and it says by the arbeh, by Yoel, oleh levnechem saperu. So Moshe Rabbeinu with the koyach of Torah Shebal Peh, he figured out what the Rebbe Shem really wanted, which was also a mockery, because here the Rebbe Shem is saying, I'll leave it up to you, so it's still a gather of hisalalti b'mitzrayim. Rabbi say, now we understand, if arbeh is really the banner makkah for Torah Shebal Peh, we know why each time it talks about arbeh, it's laman tisaper be'oznei bincha, because Torah Shebachsav is Ksoiv zoisi karn b'sefer. It's black and white. But Torah Shebal Peh is sipur be'oznei bincha, is relating orally. That is why they have the emphasis of laman tisaper be'oznei bincha uben bincha. By the way, the Imrei Emes, the Ger Rebbe points out that means this makkah had like two chalakim to it. It had the chelik of Torah Shebachsav and the chelik of Torah Shebal Peh. That's why if you have in the makkah, you have Laman Tesaper, that's the chelik of Torah Shebal Peh, and the Es Oisoisai, Oisioisai, those are the Oisios, so to speak. That's the Torah Shebachsav, that's the chelik of the Torah Shebachsav. Laman Shisi Oisoisai Ela Bekirboy, that's the Torah Shebachsav, and then Laman Tesaper is the Torah Shebal Peh. So it could be, it's suggested, that is why of all the makkos, this is the only makkah that was noch b'Shabbos. Why? Because who was Mamtzi, who invented the concept of Shabbos in Mitzrayim? This was the Hamtzah, this was the Chiddush of Moshe Rabbeinu. This was the novelty, this was the invention of Moshe Rabbeinu. If you look at number 9, the Medrash Rabbah says, Davar Acher, Vayar b'sivloisam, Ra sha'ein lohem menucha. Moshe Rabbeinu saw their burden. He saw they did not have any respite. Halach v'yomar lepara. He went and he said, "Mish sheyesh lo yeved." Someone who has a slave. Emeino inach yom echad b'shavua meis. If he doesn't rest one day a week, he's going to die. V'yu avadecha meina tamaniach lem yom echad b'shavua hey meisim. Your avadim, if you don't let them rest, they're going to die. So Amar loy lech v'asin l'gweisha toimar. Parshas said, "Fine, that's a good idea. You invented the Shabbos. Go tell them about it." Halach Moshe v'tikein lohem es yom haShabbos lanuach. That's one of the meanings we say in the davening Shabbos morning. Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelka. Let Moshe rejoice. Why Moshe? Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who invented the Shabbos in Mitzrayim. So it suggested that it could be that is why the makas of arbeh also rested on Shabbos, because these are the two inventions of Moshe Rabbeinu: the invention of Shabbos and the invention of makas arbeh. So therefore, so to speak, they're meshulav, they're mitzuraf together, they're joined together, they're combined together. These two innovations of Moshe Rabbeinu, and just like Moshe Rabbeinu invented rest on Shabbos, Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who invented the koyach of makas arbeh. Now, Rabbi say, the Rebbe Rabbunim says that why did Moshe Rabbeinu choose arbeh? I mean, he could have chosen a lot of, he could have brought a tsunami, could have brought a lot of makas. Okay, but that means Moshe Rabbeinu is sort of, he had a certain flexibility, and the Rebbe Rabbunim says the reason why he invented arbeh was why? Because Parshas said pen yirbeh, and Hashem gave a bracha to Avram Avinu, harbeh arbeh, so Moshe Rabbeinu said, arbeh, you'll see arbeh. But with this idea, that makas arbeh was the banner of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, maybe we could explain it a little bit further. Right, there's a famous question. The Zohar HaKadosh says, it's brought up by the Pnei Yeshua, Masechta Kedusha, Daf Lamed, that the word Yisrael stands for Yesh, Shishim, Riboy, Oisi, Ois, La Torah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. The question is, okay, but there are a lot more Jews than 600,000 Jews. So how does every Jew have a chelik in Torah? There are more than 600,000 Jews. So there's an idea, there's 600,000 letters, but every letter really consists of more parts. Let's say an aleph is a vav and two yuds. What? They're different. They're ksarim. Some say the trub. Some say the tagim. Another pshat is there's 600 letters in the Torah Shebachsav. But how does every Jew have a chelik in Torah? Because even though the Torah Shebachsav is finite, but the Torah Sheba'al Peh is infinite, right? What does Shlomo Melch say? He said, "L'chol tichla ra'isi kates rechava mitzvascha ma'oid," right? Aruka me'eretz mido rechava mineyam. Torah Sheba'al Peh is infinite. So since the Torah Sheba'al Peh is infinite, that allows Klal Yisrael to expand beyond 600,000. In other words, what is the source of the ability of Klal Yisrael to be harbeh arbeh? Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Mela Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to counteract Paro's concern of pen yirbeh. He was trying to bring out the bracha of harbeh arbeh. How does he do it? With makas arbeh. Makas arbeh is the banner makkah of the Torah Sheba'al Peh. He did it through the koyach of Gezerah Shavah. So now let's just add one thing, mamish half of a fella. Many Sfarim write, and we discussed this once years ago, but not quite like this, that you look at the Asara Makos. Unfortunately, we still have a very childish perception of the Asara. What are the Makos? To us, it's like a big circus. One day, Paro is taking a shower and the blood comes out, and then he's eating a piece of cake and a disemboweled frog. It's like a circus. What's the concept of the Asara Makos? So it's brought down in many Svarim, in the Tzvar Hamar. It's brought down by the Chidushei Harim. It's brought down in the Sefer Masei Hashem that Paro was a kofer in Brias Ha'olam. Paro did not believe in the creation of the world. How did God create the world? Ba'asara ma'amaros nivra ha'olam. So Hashem said, you don't believe that I created the world with 10 ma'amaros? Take 2. I'm going to reinforce and authenticate and certify that I was the one who said the Asar Ma'amaris. Every one of the Makkah demonstrated God's ability of another over another act of creation. But the way the Sfarim write it is, it goes backwards. The first Maimer of creation was Bereshis. Paro didn't believe in Bereshis. You don't believe I have control over the first? Makas b'chayros. You'll see I have control over the first. You'll see I was the one who said, Vayomer, right? Bidvar Hashem shamayim na'asu. You'll see I have control over the Rashis. What was the second Maimer of creation? Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. Oh, Paro. You don't believe I created the Or? We'll turn the lights out. Then you'll believe that I created the Or. It goes backward. We're not going to explain each one, but using this formula then, the first Amira was Shemayim V'aretz. Right, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says, Bereshis Nami Mamarhu. So Bereshis was solidified by Makas B'chayros. By the way, I'll tell you an amazing Chiddush. That means Makas B'chayros was upholding which Maimar? Bereshis Bar Alekim. If you notice, between Makas Choshech and Makas B'chayros, there's an interruption with the mitzvah of HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. What's the first Rashi in Chumash? Really, the Torah should have started with HaChodesh Lachem. Ayam Menorah. Rashi, you know what? The first time, you're right, it should have started that way. But the second time Hashem created the world, it did start that way. Because Makas B'chayros, which is Bereshis, did begin with an introduction of HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. It's amazing. And there are a lot of ramazim in this. But let's talk about the third Maimar. The third Maimar is Vayam Elokim Yehi Rakia. By V'hirakia, the Soich HaMayim, V'mavdil Bein Mayim L'Mayim. The third Maimer of creation was the Rakia, the separation of the waters. That corresponds to which Makkah? Arbeh. Grasshoppers. What? Right? Makas B'chayros corresponds to Bereshis. Choshech corresponds to Yehiar. Arbeh corresponds to what? V'ayam Elokim Yehi Rakia B'soich HaMayim V'mavdil. If you look in Tikunei Zayar, on the pasuk, Yehi Rakia B'soich HaMayim V'mavdil Vein Mayim L'Mayim. What's Ein Mayim Ela? Torah. So what's the Mayim El Yoinim and what's the Mayim Tachtoinim? Mayim El Yoinim is Torah Shebachsav. Mayim Tachtoinim is a Torah Shebal Peh. Torah Shebal Peh is a Loi B'Shamayim Hi. It's downstairs ba'aretz, like the Gemara Masechta B'Matzia by the Tanur Shel Achnoi, that the Torah Shabbat was given downstairs to the Chachmei Yisrael to learn with Gzeira Shava and Kal V'Chomer and Klal U'Prada Klal and so forth. So which Makkah is the reflection of Torah Shabbat Arbeh. How? Because Hashem never told Moshe Rabbeinu. He just told Moshe Rabbeinu, Boyel Parai. And Moshe Rabbeinu, through the koyach of Yehi Rakia B'soich HaMayim V'mavdil Vein Mayim L'Mayim, Moshe Rabbeinu was mamsi, he was mechadesh the makkah of arbeh, which was in order to increase Klal Yisrael, and the increasement of Klal Yisrael and the growth of Klal Yisrael is commensurate with the growth of the Torah Shabbat Peh. And this is why, of all the makas, the greatest mockery was the mockery of the arbeh.
Why is it the greatest mockery?
Again, because Moshe Rabbeinu invented it. It's his own. Just want to add one thing. If you look in Sefer Mishlei, there is one facet of grasshoppers that does not exist by any other species. The pasuk says in Mishlei, "Ein melech ba'arbeh." There is no melech by an arbeh. There are no leaders. There's no malchus. They're all one for all and all for right. There's no malchus. Maybe we could say Pari was koifer in the Rakia. In other words, Pari was koifer in Torah Shabbat Peh. Torah Shabbat Peh is called the Midah of Malchus. Torah Shabbat is the Midah of Malchus. So Pari, you don't believe in a melech? Oh, you're going to see what happens when I give you something where there's no Malchus. That's the makkah of arbeh. Also, the pasuk says, Ein melech ba'arbeh. And it could be also, the purpose of Torah Shabbat Peh is it's supposed to bring a person, it's the shashua of Torah, it's the delight of Torah, it's the enjoyment of Torah, it's the hana of Torah. Para, your koifer in Torah Shabbat Peh, which is the greatest happiness, the greatest simcha. I'm going to be misameach with you, I'm going to mock you. Eis asher hasalalti b'mitzrayim. So this is some of the oimek ha'inyan of the first makkah in this week's Parsha, which is the makkah of Laman Tisaper Ba'oznei Bincha Ben Bincha, which is really the Torah Shabbat Peh, which we pass on Ba'oznei Bincha Ben Bincha Ad Soif Kol Hadaros. Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.